Welcome back, everybody. This is episode 2 of the Calibrated Ukraine War Map Updates. Today is the 24th of September, 2025. I appreciate you all joining me. I know that this is slightly different. I've explained this in my last video, but I'm going to continue explaining it. So if you've heard it, you can just skip to the beginning of the video. But first and foremost, I appreciate everybody being in here. I now do my Ukraine War Map updates separate from my live streams where we cover plethora of geopolitical events, not just dealing with Ukraine. I found that to be more inclusive with the chat, more constructive, and just I'm having better live streams that way. So we are separating this. I hope that you are getting the information you need from these videos. Please leave a comment if you think I should be doing something different. Leave a like if you think I'm doing what I need to do to get the information to you guys in the proper means, manner, and mode. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we will get right into it. All right. We have a lot of updates to go over today, but we are going to start down here in the Zaporozhye region. Russian forces have entered the village of Stepanorisk. I hope I pronounced that right. I've been practicing. They have entered the entire southern portion of the village. Remember that the reservoirs over here, any water you see in this area is probably almost non-existent due to the blowing of the Novokhovka Dam and the entire reservoir draining to the south into the Black Sea. So like for instance, this area right here is probably drained and is passable by foot. But as you can see, there's a small land bridge here with a railroad across it. The Russians have utilized this area to enter into the southern edge of the village. And then over here, Russian forces have entered the village from this university school campus ground. So movement on the western portion of Zaporozhye, excuse me. And then for Zaporozhye itself, just something to pay attention to. In recent days, the Russian aerospace forces have begun seriously bombarding the industrial facilities in Zaporozhye to a level I have never seen throughout the war. We're talking 3 to 4 days of just continuous bombing. I'm pretty sure they are making some of these larger facilities here inoperable. They're just going to bomb the whole thing and just make every single one of these buildings basically non-functional. The plants in this area are still producing for the Ukrainian armed forces, and it appears that the Russians have made a decision just to completely destroy that production capability in Zaporozhye. Moving over to the Zaporozhye-Dnipropetrovsk region. Remember, the entire southern Donetsk oblast in the south has been pushed out by the Russians. There is no more southern Donetsk in this area for the Russians to capture. Now it is all Zaporozhye and Dnipropetrovsk. So coming down here to the bottom corner, Poltavka, Russian forces have advanced on the eastern side of the Yunchur River here, which runs all along these set of villages. To the north, we have Russian advances into Klenvitske and Novohyorivka. Guys, the Russians are advancing here incredibly fast, and I'm going to show you a map of fortifications here in a second, but I just wanted to point out that this is all over the last 6 days. Russian forces are advancing at a pace of, say, 2 to 3 kilometers a day in this area in a wide stretching front. So this part of the front is moving faster than anywhere else on the map. And that is due to this location right here in particular. Excuse me. My allergies are really bad. So if I cough sometimes throughout this or sneeze, please excuse me. And pay attention to this village right here, Yusempenivka. You can see it very visibly on the other map. I just want you to pay attention to this area in terms of the fortifications that I'm about to show you. Here you can see those fortifications. And this is brought to you by Plefra. He is a pro-Ukrainian mapper, but he does excellent work, very detailed maps. You can see he has all of the fortifications labeled out on this map, and maybe not all of them, but a good majority of them. And you can see that the Russians have penetrated the last Ukrainian defense line in this region. There are defense lines that are meant to protect north to south, but not east to west this far. So The Russians are through. They have this entire open area. And here's that village of Yusempenivka that I was talking about. The Russians are able to push out into the north of this and just capture all of this territory. If I was a Russian commander and I was looking at the battlefield right now, I would potentially instruct a bunch of my men to get on dirt bikes and just push out very quick and establish positions and create a bunch of chaos to get the Ukrainian armed forces off balance, and then a large Russian assault to then fortify or establish permanent positions in those areas where those DRGs had entered. That's what I would do. Just looking at the fortifications and how weak the situation is, I think the Russians could cause a lot of chaos in this region for the Ukrainians, and the Ukrainians would have almost no means to respond. As we've seen, the 3rd Azov Brigade, which is one of their emergency brigades, sent to Pokrovsk. I'm sorry, the 12th Azov Brigade was sent to Pokrovsk. The 3rd was transferred from the Lyman region to Kupiansk. So there are not really very many options for Ukrainian rotation to fortify this area. And, this area has been progressing seriously for some time, and we haven't seen really any major Ukrainian response. So I don't know if the Ukrainians are just incapable or if they don't see it as much of a priority. I couldn't tell you right now. Moving up here, Russian forces have advanced and crossed the Vovocha River line into Dnipropetrovsk Oblast and into the village of Ivanivka. This is important because if the Russians can get behind Novopavlivka, gain access to this road, they will be able to push up and put pressure on Mezova, which will then help to capitulate this very, very tough Ukrainian defense line right here west of Pokrovsk. Forward attacks in this region are not really working. This defense line is incredibly strong. The Russians are finding more success crossing a river and bypassing it entirely. Small Russian advance here in Moravka, where the Russians have completely captured the village. Moving up to Pokrovsk, Russian forces were geolocated in this region here, ambushing Ukrainian soldiers which were retreating back across the railway line. Those Ukrainian soldiers were KIA'd, and so we have Russian presence up into the western edge of Pokrovsk, which makes logistics even more difficult into this very deep salient. Moving up to the northern breakthrough area from July, August, we can see that Ukrainian forces, I have updated the map with a Ukrainian forces advance. This is not necessarily a new advance, just clarification on what they control in this area. They have gained control back of the railway station, some of the fortified lines, and into Nekarnorivka. However, the Russian advance, or the Ukrainian advance, into Boykivka is not, as maps really show. The Ukrainians use this as an alley to push into this region. However, there's not really serious permanent positions. So some of the maps make this area look like it's completely cut off, but it's not. And as you can see, we've actually had 2 Russian advances, but my map didn't change. Some Russian sources are saying that Novoshikove has come under Russian control again, and that there was an advance down in this area. So those are 2 advances that I have not marked, but we do have a geolocation of Russian forces in this quarry sand lot area over here. So the Russians are still progressing in this northern salient, not a ton, just maintaining it. And the Ukrainians continue to try to cut it off down here on the southern flanks. Moving over to the Konstantinivka front, we have some serious Russian advances here, which are going to have some consequences. We can see that Russian forces have advanced up to the fortification line, which is the last remaining position for the Ukrainian forces on the southern end of this reservoir. I thought the Ukrainian forces should have left from here weeks ago, but they have been swimming across and bringing in drones with supplies and stuff like that. It's insanity to me not to just back up and defend the reservoir line, but the Ukrainians refuse. And so now they are even becoming more trapped in this little area. Again, Russian forces have advanced up to the line. And over here, this area outside of the mine has been captured up to the Krivi Torets River right here, and up into Peshchivka, which is right across from Nevelpivka, right across the railway line. And this is going to, again, put even more pressure on the salient. I expect this salient to close here in the coming week. I don't think the Ukrainians are going to be able to maintain it any longer, especially because most of this little village right here of Klebanvik has just been erased. All right, moving up to the eastern flank of Konstantinivka, Russian forces have closed this pocket here, advanced, captured most of the high ground, and have entered the Dacha area east of Konstantinivka. I don't necessarily know if this means that the Russian forces have entered Konstantinivka. It's a little bit separate. It's hard to tell, but the best I can see, I don't think I'm going to count this as the Russians entering Konstantinivka. I think I'm going to count this as the Russians entering Konstantinivka. The second they cross into this area, I think this is separate, but I just don't know what town it's a part of. Anyway, very important advance. And if we come over here and look at my upcoming predictions, you can see that it's already advanced past where this prediction line was. And the only thing we're waiting on is the reservoir to be abandoned by the Ukrainians. And then that prediction will be complete and done. Very good. Okay, moving up to the Siversk front. Russian forces have advanced along this sort of ridge line here into the old mine facility, which lies just north of Siversk. This sort of puts an end to the entire Severodonetsk campaign for the Ukrainians. This is a multi-year campaign that is now coming to an end. And, it started when the Ukrainians counterattacked in Kharkov in 2022. And now the Russians have returned all of the Serbyansky forestry, as well as the entirety of the Severodonetsk River. And I don't imagine there are very many Ukrainians in this region. They're just probably sort of holding the backside of the Bakhmutivka River, and this is mostly gray zone. I do expect the Russians to close this pocket in the near future. But as we come down here and look at Siversk, Siversk is getting pushed from the south and the north. This pocket is getting very tight. Logistics are already harassed severely coming into Siversk. So I believe here very soon, the Ukrainians will be forced to back out of at least the areas surrounding Siversk, back into Siversk, and then we'll eventually do a slow fight and then retreat over the Bakhmutivka River, which runs through the city and sort of divides this entire area. I will bring up my predictions thing because I did make a prediction that the Russians were going to advance out and capture this area. As you can see, that is already becoming a reality on the map. Moving up to the Lyman front, we can see that Russian forces have entered the village of Yampil here and have advanced northwest of Dronivka into sort of this separated marsh area. This area is not occupied not controlled very well because of how difficult logistics are into it. I imagine this area is rather empty, but it doesn't need to be occupied because it's so divided by the river lines and the ponds and everything. More importantly is as the Russians advance either through Yampil or to the south of it through this area, once they cut this highway that runs from Lyman to Siversk, Siversk is going to be in a very, very bad way. It is going to be cut off from all communication with Lyman. There is still the possibility of supplying it through these roads to the west. However, it is going to, again, narrow the supply line to one road, which can be easily targeted by Russian forces and drones, as well as just reduces the overall amount of supply that can come into the city. So expect progress on the Siversk front. All right, moving up into the Lyman front, we have a Russian advance west of Torske, south of Zeshcherene. Russian forces have advanced through these plantations towards the village of Lyman. Russian forces are now less than 4 miles east of Lyman. Moving up to the north, Russian forces have advanced onto the village of Stavki, or advanced towards the village of Stavki. Remember, guys, I've said that Stavki is very, very important. It is the last remaining Ukrainian position on the high ground that overlooks and protects Lyman. Once Stavki falls, the Russians will be in an opportune position to fire down into Lyman, control the logistics into the city. As we can see, it follows the river here, which is the low ground. So Stavki is very important for the Ukrainians to maintain. If they lose the village, they will have a very, very difficult time holding Lyman in the long run. Moving over to the northwestern flank of Lyman, Russian forces have captured the village of Darilove, have entered the village of Novoselivka, have captured the village of Shanderlove, and have captured the village of Sardizhne, which is quite a large zone to capture. And guys, remember, the Ukrainians run logistics also from Izum to Lyman because it doesn't have to cross a river line. That is probably no longer the case. And if it is still the case, the Russians are 3 miles away from cutting off that logistics route completely by dividing it by a river. So in the coming days, if Novoselivka falls, if the Russians are able to get into this forest plantation, the supply into Lyman is going to become very difficult. You're going to see supply coming across a few pontoon bridges here on this side of the river, which will be harassed by Russian artillery, glide bombs, and drones. And the management of the Lyman front will become much, much more difficult for the Ukrainian armed forces. All right, moving up to the north, we have a small Russian advance here just along the highway west of Stepove Novosilka. Again, this pocket is just getting tighter and more constrained for the Ukrainians. However, we did see the Ukrainians move the 3rd Azov Brigade up to the Kupiansk area from the Lyman area. So the progress in the Lyman area begins picking up. Expect the progress in the Kupiansk area to slow down. All right, final update for today. Russian forces have expanded their small bridgehead into the Kharkov region, which is not a major advance, but it goes along with one of my predictions that Russian forces would be trying to advance towards the village of Prikolontine. I don't know how to pronounce that, but this village right here is another one of these crossroad villages that lies in the middle of 3 separate highways, 3 separate directions. If the Russians can gain control of that, they will be able to put pressure on the backside of Vovchansk, the backside of Kupiansk, and then begin pushing towards Chudahiv. I had predicted that this area would see some Russian movement here in the near future, and that is what we are beginning to see. This is also very important because if the Russians are able to meet this up with the Oskil bridgehead here, the Oskil bridgehead expands considerably, and the advance along this line will become easier once logistics is simplified and it doesn't have to cross the Oskil. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. I appreciate you all tuning in. Be sure to check out my live streams. Those happen at irregular times based off of how much content I have to talk about. In today's episode, today's live stream, we will be talking about Trump's recent statements and his 180 on his position about Ukrainian victory, which is not really a 180 on policy, but just in terms of what Trump tweets about, it is a 180. We will be discussing that on today's live stream. So if you do watch this beforehand, be sure to tune into that. And if you are coming here from that live stream, it is great to see you. I appreciate you guys making it over here. Please leave a like. It's all I can ask. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your week.